Are you sick of me yet? I'm sick of me. I'm Tim Green. I'm the features editor of the MEF. I moderated the last session, and now I'm back again to moderate this next session. And it's time for some global market forecasts. So I'm very pleased to introduce Nick Lane of Mobilesquared, and many of you will be familiar with him. And he's about to present a forecast on the global A2P messaging market opportunity. And then we'll have a quick chat after that. So Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We've been asked to obviously share our A2P messaging forecast by MEF. It's great to be here, great to be part of a great event. So just to get through some standard things is that we're going to look at the global A2P messaging market opportunity today. And I've continued to see a number of questions, certainly on things like LinkedIn, channels like LinkedIn, looking at the whether SMS is going to die. So my alternative title for this presentation is A2P SMS is not going to die. Okay, it's in good hands. Now, what I'm going to do with this is start with the conclusion when I get there. This is a bit about Mobilesquared. This is about where we've got the data from included in these presentations. These are where we get our forecasts, and we cover our global obviously data books breaking down by 200 markets. This is our new product, which is launching. Now, down to business. So this is the summary. This is where we see the market. So firstly, revenues are on the increase. Traffic is on the increase. So A2P, in summary, is in a really good position. But let's kind of give you a bit more detail. Why are we saying that? So if you look at users by channel, there are about 5.1 billion unique mobile users globally. So that obviously represents 5.1 billion SMS users. If you look at something like RCS, you can see from the screen that actually that's in a period of very, very strong growth, certainly in relation to the other channels. So RCS users, we expect there'll be about 775 million by the end of this year. And in terms of potential RCS users, by the end of this year, there'll be about, there's about 2.7 billion. So potentially these are the Android users that could be converted into RCS users. So in terms of from the A2P side of things, in terms of SMS's evolution to RCS, the potential is there. It's coming. So now it's really a case of what's going to happen with these revenues, with the traffic, and what does that mean? Just to put a little bit of perspective on things. So this is the average A2P SMS received by a user on a daily basis. So as of 2020, on average, a user will receive 0.88 of a message, and that will grow to 0.91. But as you can see, that figure really starts to kind of slow down to the point where by 2024, that 0.91 is actually starting to decline. And that's really where we really start to see a lot of migration and more traffic on the alternative enriched channels. And we'd expect A2P SMS to start a slow decline from that period onwards. But for the foreseeable future, and certainly during our forecast period, A2P SMS is we're just expecting to grow. Some of you might have seen this slide. I've used it a couple of times. It's based on our research during the lockdown, during the pandemic. And we did a big, massive piece of research in conjunction with MEF as well to look at the demand for the various messaging channels during lockdown, and also expectations in terms of what would happen after lockdown. And as you can see, the increase in demand for SMS grew dramatically as brands and businesses turned to a channel that they're familiar with, and they all use it as a kind of safety net in terms of getting their communications out there in the world where obviously face-to-face communication activity was obviously very, very limited. In terms of the downward trajectory towards post-lockdown, that just shows that actually demand is still increased, but it's slowing down over a given period of time. But again, it just it goes to show where SMS stands within kind of the mindset within brands. Let's just look at traffic for a few minutes. So this is where we see the world as of 2020. We believe A2P SMS is performing incredibly well. We expect there to be about 1.8 trillion messages sent this year. That's an average of just under 5 billion a day. So almost every user on average will be receiving one message per day. Compared to 2019, that's a 9% year-on-year growth. And one thing that we do still see is that grey traffic is very prevalent. And right now we expect, we believe around 37% of all traffic is grey. You can see from the breakdown on the right-hand side of the top 5 sectors, it's obviously at the top is finance, followed by retail and e-commerce. Now, what we expect to happen over our forecast period up to the end of 2024 is that on average, you expect the average sectors to grow by 33%. As you can see from the slide, 10 of these sectors we expect to grow above average growth over this period, dominated or driven primarily by healthcare and social media and chat. In terms of traffic, again, what we've done is by showing 2018 to 2024, just really want to show that actually things are starting to level off now. So growth between 2018 and 2024 stood at about 26.3%. If you then look at growth between this year and our end of 2024, that's now down to 15%. So things are starting to level off and certainly plateau within the A2P SMS traffic space, we believe. But again, that's not a bad thing because obviously other channels are coming. If other channels weren't coming, then this is what we'd expect the world to look like. So you would see, so the blue effectively accounts for traffic that will migrate away from SMS. But if we assume that that isn't happening, then what we would expect to see over our long forecast period between 18 and 24 would be growth of around 45%, and then growth between 2020 and 2024 at around about 31%. However, RCS is pretty much here, WhatsApp is here, other channels are here. This is just something that we put together to show where that migration, where that traffic is going to go. We expect the majority of traffic over time to go towards RCS, and a percentage of that to also go towards WhatsApp app, which is obviously the app is targeting the small and micro companies. The large and medium enterprises that have to use the WhatsApp business API, and they're very much a customer care P2A model. So we're not really concerned with that in this presentation. But what you can see is by the end of 2024, the traffic that would have migrated away from SMS is about 13%. The majority of that is onto RCS. And just kind of show you what we expect from those 3 channels, the kind of total traffic view to look like. As you can see, it's very much dominated. The blue is SMS. Right now, that accounts for about 95% of traffic. That will drop to around 60% by 2024, whereby WhatsApp will be about 30%, RCS will be about 11 or 12%. As you can see, things are starting to change. Brands are wanting to use more and more richer channels, but they are doing so in a way that positions SMS very much as kind of the platform for which they're still using messaging. So over the period, in terms of total business messaging traffic across all 3 channels, we expect that to go from around the 1.5 billion of 2018, stands at about 1.79 trillion at the end of this year, and it will grow to about 3.3 trillion. So over that full forecast period, that's 84% growth. And what that means from a user perspective is that almost the number of average messages that they will receive, regardless of the channels, or certainly looking at these 3 channels, will nearly double by the end of 2024. And as you can see from the growth trajectory, if we then were to extend that forward beyond this period, there would be some dramatic numbers being shown as more and more brands use messaging as one of their primary communication channels. If we look at spend, what does that mean? So in terms of A2P, we believe the market will be worth $17.9 billion at the end of this year. We expect that to grow to $21.14 billion by the end of 2024. And again, this in terms of spend, obviously that's going to be reflected in from the traffic as well. But you can see that the year-on-year increase in spend is starting to slow. Between 18 and 19, that was about 15%. By 23 to 24, that figure will be down to about 2.8%. And then, so the growth is slowing. As I've said, we expect that to kind of plateau from about 2024. And then the market, we think, will start declining. Not dramatically, it's not going to suddenly fall off a cliff, but we will start to see that spend shift onto rich channels. So in a world where there's no grey, this is what the market would look like right now. So 2020, you'll see spend of about 26.3 billion. It would increase to about 27.5 billion by 2024. So right now, spend accounts for, grey traffic accounts for about 37% of traffic, and it's about, I believe it's a similar figure, it's about a third of total spend. Over the forecast period, we don't think grey is going to go away. We still think it will account for about a quarter of all spend within the A2P SMS ecosystem. So just to put that into perspective, so the cumulative spend by businesses on A2P SMS, this is between 2020 and 2024, will be $135.5 billion. That's a lot of money coming in. Now of that, $37.1 billion will be grey. And put that into perspective, if we average that out across 750 mobile operators, obviously I know not every mobile operator is monetizing A2P SMS, but let's assume that they are, then that means that over that between 2020 and 2024, each operator on average will be losing around $50 million. So that's about $10 million a year. So that's all of a sudden a big number. So when you start to look at your P&L within the wholesale side of things, can you afford to lose 10 million? I'm pretty sure the answer is no. So this is still a big problem for the industry, and it needs addressing. So as a figure, that accounts for more than a quarter of that cumulative spend that is being lost beyond the mobile operator ecosystem. So in terms of total spend, we expect that to go from around, obviously it's about 17, 18 billion right now, dominated by A2P SMS. We expect that to grow to about 33.4 billion by 2024. As you can see the breakdown on the screen, almost 2/3 of that would be from A2P SMS by 2024. Significant, about a quarter would be RCS, and about 12% would be on WhatsApp. But as you can see, this is how the market's changing, is that everything now in terms of the rich spend is supplementary primarily to what is happening within existing spend behavior. So this is really kind of sitting on top of everything that businesses are spending in terms of A2P SMS, mostly. So cannibalisation is obviously one of the key things that operators often talk about. We get asked quite a lot about this. What is the impact that this will have on their A2P SMS spend? So we're just going to look very briefly, as we get towards the end of this presentation, at the impact that this could have, an RCS could have on a mobile operator's A2P SMS revenues. So there's a completely pointless green arrow. I really don't need to put in there. So this is what we're going to look at. So this blue block here represents the traffic spend that on A2P SMS that has migrated over onto RCS. Now what we're going to assume is that traffic spend will have a 15% markup if we assume that some operators are looking at just putting a slight premium on the cost of that SMS when they charge an RCS message. That's all we've done, keeping it very simple. We're not looking at different pricing models. We're not looking at chat. This is just a pure A2P model that shows what operators need to consider when they obviously think about launching something like RCS. So on top of that, the red denote the potential cannibalisation in terms of there's a third element coming in now. It's not just the operator, it's not just their aggregator partner or partners. You've now got the potential RCS platform provider. Obviously, there are a couple of models that are emerging. One is typically from the open RCS model, and the other is the OTT model. So what we've looked at, and obviously I can't go into too much detail, but what this typically shows is that just from the traffic that migrates over from SMS onto RCS, when we apply an RCS model and factor in the impact that the cannibalisation in terms of a rev share could have. So one rev share is looking at an amortization over a 3-year period, which means that by the end of 2024, that has now been removed, that's been paid. And the other is a kind of flat rate ongoing fee. Now, as you can see, from one model, an operator would only lose about 3% of that A2P SMS revenue. In the other model, in the flat rate model, the operator potentially would lose 42% of that A2P SMS spend when it's then moved over into RCS. But that's just a very kind of a very small view of how this could affect an operator. So if we apply this to the full RCS model, for example, and we look at our traffic and we've applied this to across an average operator with average expectations based on their SMS spend and expected RCS spend, this is what we see. So in model 1, we expect the rev share from total RCS spend to account for about 2% between 2020 and 2024. In the flat rate model, we expect this to be about 29% of total spend. But neither should be viewed negatively, because what overall it means by an operator evolving and launching RCS is that based on just their average A2P SMS revenues alone, they will receive over the period up to the end of 2024, they will effectively get a 240% uplift in spend by businesses by launching that richer platform. And again, even with the flat rate model, they're still going to have 185% uplift in terms of spend by businesses as businesses look for a richer alternative to SMS. So we believe that messaging is on the verge of becoming mainstream. We believe it's about to become as important as TV and the internet and social media, and businesses are starting to see that as well. Obviously, the pandemic has changed the way that businesses think. It's changed the way, or even their speed of approach towards their digital transformation. And what it has meant is put urgency on how they now communicate moving forward in this new normal. Messaging obviously puts their communication on a personalized level straight into their customer's hand. And that's me done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. We've actually had quite a few questions come over while you were speaking, so let's whiz through those. Shaylis wants to know, you said that you highlighted healthcare as one of the top 2 growing sectors. Do you have any indication of what kind of use cases the healthcare sector is going to deploy for messaging?
Typically, I mean, in terms of our modelling, we've kind of limited the use cases down to about 5 or 6. And then obviously there's lots of subsections that feed into that. But I mean, primarily it's looking at kind of alerts, appointment reminders, basic communications between healthcare provider and customer. I mean, you know, if you think looking at your COVID tests, I'm pretty sure you get that back via an SMS. And if you don't, you probably should do. So it's basically a very standard kind of unilateral communication between provider and patient.
Well, given that you can't actually see a doctor in the UK at the moment, then getting a message to say your telephone appointment is ready is probably something that we're all experiencing. So Kevin, who was on the last panel actually, he wants to know, when you're taking into consideration the traffic loss due to pricing, are you taking into consideration the traffic loss due to pricing increases if grey routes were all monetized?
Yeah, so what we do when we look at the loss potential is in our normal forecast, we have grey route traffic at grey route prices, based on the data that we get from the consumers, from industry, from aggregators, from operators. So we apply that. But what we do in terms of looking at understanding our loss potential is apply the white rate cost of a message for that market to that traffic. And that's how we really kind of work out what the difference is in terms of the total potential and what is obviously effectively leaking out into the grey world.
Okay. Musa wants to know the message received per user per day. You had that as 0.9 in 2024. Does that include both grey and white traffic?
Yes.
Okay.
So based on the fact that typically there's, in theory, one third of all of traffic will be grey.
Right. Okay. Musa also wants to know: do you see A2P one-time password messages being cannibalized by other use cases like P2A and API-based authentication?
Potentially, but it depends on costs and security. So right now, I think SMS is a good place. It's a good platform for OTP, 2FA, etc. Moving forward, it really depends on what the solution is. I know that someone like Facebook is trying to create their own, and they want to do that, and it will save them a lot of money. But likewise, I mean, the other thing is that, I guess the other thing you've got to consider are these companies, the big companies, the ones really driving down the cost. So something has to give there certainly from the pricing model. If pricing becomes more competitive moving forward, then potentially I would imagine it would stay on there, certainly for the foreseeable future. It's not a case of you're going to wake up one morning and think, right, I'm going to put everything onto RCS. I'm going to put everything on WhatsApp. It is going to be everything moving over from an established channel like SMS and really well trusted will move over gradually. And the brands, they're going to dip their toe in the water and slowly they will move stuff over. But, I think there seems to be this fear that, we're just going to wake up one morning and go, right, RCS time. And that won't happen. So no, I think for the time being, next couple of years at least, I think a lot of the security-based traffic will stay on SMS. And based on cost, I can't see why it move on to another channel for now.
So Leonidas has, sort of picking up on what you just said, really, it's the kind of big question. Do you believe that RCS will ever work at scale, or at the end, OTT will dominate? I mean, that's basically, do you believe in RCS question, really, isn't it?
No.
You kind of answered it, but.
No, RCS is going to happen. It's gone too far down the line for it to not happen. The only question that we have is, when will it happen, and how is it going to happen? Because we kind of think, this is what I touched on last week, is looking at how do we take RCS to market, and I think we've fundamentally failed. In terms of we've looked at this whole, you need to be RCS a gold market. You need every operator in that country to have launched RCS. But what you're basically telling brands are, it's only Vodafone that have launched. Don't bother going there for now. I mean, it's a crazy message that we've actually been perpetuating and sending out to brands. What we should be saying, actually, and fair play to Vodafone, they're really pushing this now, is that they're going out to brands and saying, we have this channel, use it. And I think something that also was touched on last week, and we've started exploring this over the last couple of weeks or months, is how you approach it. RCS is a digital channel, but we're applying analog messaging principles to it. So the whole opt-in, you need to have your opt-in database. But the issue that you've got with that is that when when an aggregator partner of a brand, an operator runs their sense check on number of available RCS-enabled devices, it comes up between 2 and 10%. The brand then just goes, oh, that's no good. I don't want to do that. I could reach 100% if I sent out an SMS rather than 2 or 10%. That's not the point. The point is you can do something much richer and much more engaging with something like RCS. So use it in a different way and start getting followers. And then gradually you can then, once you've got those followers, start to hit them with the A2P model. But you've got to get them first. So, this should be up to the brands. In the digital world, WhatsApp wasn't launched with a, oh, shall we? Well, you might not be able to get it on one operator in Cambodia, so we won't launch it. That's not it. It's like give it to the people, and I think that's what happens. That's what has happened now with RCS.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, inevitably, some anonymous person has asked, "What's the situation with regards to Apple?" I mean, in your many conversations with the industry, have you got any insight at all on whether you think Apple will join RCS or not?
There's no reason why Apple would join. I mean, why would they support Google? There's no point. Would they support Samsung, their biggest device competitor? No, it doesn't make any sense. They've got a perfectly good messaging platform, and they've also, that performs fallback to SMS. They're quite happy with that. Can they see value in joining the RCS movement? Not really. Do we expect them to? No. Not moving forward. In the short term, if they did, it would be very impactful, because obviously all of a sudden you could turn on 1 billion devices or so with RCS overnight with the software upgrade. It's not the piecemeal update on a device or a device segment within a manufacturer, which is what's happening with RCS, which is one of the reasons, kind of adoption is so slow right now. So Apple would have an immediate impact in the short term, but long term, it wouldn't have much of an impact once RCS is established in 4 or 5 years' time.
Loads of questions here, but we've only got 2 more minutes, so I'll just whiz through as many as I can with you. Do your models consider the possibility of WhatsApp pivoting their position towards more traditional A2P use cases to capture more brand revenues? So
we have, in the API space, we have a little bit in the API. So obviously the API is for the medium and large enterprises. They do have to have this opt-in approach before they can communicate and send anything out. Obviously, if they then send something out, it is very much kind of under the watchful eye of WhatsApp. And again, a lot of businesses don't really like that. They find that too kind of restrictive. On the small and micro, we're seeing quite a shift over. So at the end of last year, there's about just over 5 million active small and micro businesses using the WhatsApp app, which is free, and they can send out messages, and there can be an element of marketing within those messages to a database of 256 people, but they can have multiple databases. So that, and that's really appealing. It's free. So then you've got during lockdown, so by the end of June, that figure had gone from just over 5 million to over 50 million. So you can see that businesses are looking, thinking, hang on a minute, they can see probably during lockdown that people communicated via WhatsApp to stay in touch, to create new groups, communities, and the small and micro guys are saying, we need to be part of this, and that's clearly what's happened. So we now expect big growth. So this year, we expect about $52 million of spend to migrate off A2P SMS into WhatsApp, because you can't say it's generating revenues because it's free. That's the whole point of it. But over the course of our forecast period up to 2024, we believe that about $1.8 billion will migrate away from A2P SMS spend onto WhatsApp. But again, the pricing, I know I'm out of time, but the pricing is based on what you'd expect. So with WhatsApp, so the small and micros, they are getting it for free. The premium WhatsApp experience is happening to the medium and large enterprises. Whereas in the A2P SMS space, it's the reverse. It doesn't make sense. So again, for the market to be sustainable in the long term, there really, we believe, has to be a review in terms of what the pricing model is between the small and micro companies, which obviously are the long tail, and the large and medium-sized enterprises, because these are the guys that are forcing these prices right down when they are buying in bulk.
Isn't that economics? You buy in bulk, you get a cheaper price.
It is economics as well, but then you've got the small companies that are suffering. They're the ones that are paying the premium for the SMS channel, but WhatsApp are offering it for free. So that model, it's only going to take a matter of time until all small and micro businesses wake up and say, hang on, I'm only reaching 50 people here. I'm being charged whatever, 5 cents, 4 cents per message. I can do that for free using this app. So gradually you're going to see more and more people moving away from SMS onto WhatsApp, and whatever other channel will emerge or have already emerged. So
is there no potential for the OTT players to start charging?
Yeah, there is. But I mean, right now, but that's not the OTT model, is it? In the short term, the OTT model is give it to them for free, then we'll monetize it.
How do you expect them to monetize?
Well, they can start charging for messages.
But will they charge per day, per user, per session, per lifetime value? What kind of models do you see emerging?
Well, what they've got to do is show it works and show that there's value. And then they can start looking at what the model is, and it could be that WhatsApp business on the app is just that someone sends you a message and someone's just saying cheers, thumbs up, lol, whatever. But if they start seeing that engagement, and then you can start thinking, well, actually there's an opportunity here to start charging for chat. But they've got to see what those use cases are, how the consumer behaves on it, how they interact with the business. Then we can start to get an idea of what the model should be. Otherwise, we're effectively retrospectively fitting behavior into a model, and that shouldn't be the way that we look at things. It should be the other way around.
I think there's time for one more question, which is if there's a shift towards RCS, will it be driven, which kinds of content will drive it? Transactional, O2P, marketing, and so on?
We don't expect O2P to go onto RCS. Because if you've got a premium to send a message compared to SMS, why would a brand even consider that? So we wouldn't expect that to move anyway over onto RCS. OTT, depending on what the cost is and security levels, possibly. But we'd expect, I think a lot of the use cases, we don't know what they will effectively be on RCS. We do think they'll be different. But otherwise, traditionally, we expect a lot of marketing and promotional traffic to move over. That's kind of the low-hanging fruit, and it kind of makes sense. If you're trying to drive revenue, trying to drive sales, get an ROI, and you've got the opportunity of rich content to do so, then we think that's what will migrate over. But again, it comes down to the content. This is something that was raised last week. If you don't have good content, no one's going to use it. So again, you've got to think in terms of your strategy. It's not just a case of putting 160 characters into a message anymore. This has to be fully thought out. It needs to be a very kind of rounded, thought out process as part of a full-on campaign to use a rich media channel, regardless of whether it's RCS or anything else.
Okay, Nick, well, entertaining as ever. And we had loads of questions, so that speaks volumes about how insightful and interesting your content is. So thanks for that. And everybody else, stay tuned for the rest of the day and the next session, which is in conversation with Telecom Global Carrier, which will be on in a few minutes. So once again, thanks, Nick, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Farewell.